If you've been following the Russia-Ukraine war at all, you've probably seen at least one video that shows a first-person view one-way drone like this one striking a main battle tank. This here is a T-72 tank and blowing it to bits. How is it that that little drone destroys a tank so easily? A modern tank is broken down into two pieces. You have the hull or the chassis. That's where most of the crew sits, and that's where the engine is located. And you have the turret, the part that sits on top of the chassis. Now, the turret has to be able to move so that it can point itself at targets. It's not very convenient if that gun was fixed to have to turn the entire tank into the direction that you want to fire. Because the turret can move, all tanks inherently have a weakness at what's called the turret ring. And the turret ring is where the turret comes down and sits on the chassis of the tank. And that turret then moves, rotates on the ring. The Soviet-designed T-72, T-80, and T-90 have more of a weakness than their Western contemporaries, such as the Challenger, the Leopard, and the Abrams. If we look a little closer at this cross-section of a T-72 tank, that area that's right behind the turret, you'll see this little gap. That's where the turret ring is. And on a T-72, that gap is 62 millimeters. If you have a dollar bill in your pocket, pull out a dollar bill. The width of the dollar bill, that's it. That's how wide the weakness is. And it's not that it's unarmored. Now, what Ukrainian drone operators are doing is they are targeting this turret ring. And that's why you see videos like this one, where we see the drone is coming in towards the rear of the tank. It hits it, and we have this spectacular explosion. Here's a second video. This one is of a T-90 tank. This one is being hit from the rear side, and we have this same thing. The ammunition inside the turret, and I'm going to get into that in a moment, cooks off almost instantly. Here's a third example that we have now. This is a disabled T-90 tank, but this really highlights how the drone operator is flying that drone in. They're positioning themselves to hit that turret ring, and you can see this very clearly in this particular video, to destroy the tank. The reason that Russian tanks are more vulnerable to this type of attack, particularly the T-64, the T-72, T-80, and the T-90, is they use autoloaders. The ammunition is located up in the turret. You have the gunner is sitting on top of that ammunition ring. The turret ring by design, although it is protected, it does have armor. There are gaps because if it was a rigid structure, if it's solid, the turret can't move. It's got to be able to turn. And to provide that ability, there are gaps. And when the drone explodes, it's not the shrapnel pushing through the armor. It's the hot gases. When something blows up, creates shrapnel, but it also creates a tremendous amount of heat, hot gases that are moving very, very fast. If those hot gases seep through the gap, those turret ring gap, and it gets into the autoloader, this is what happens. It cooks off the ammunition inside of that loader, and you have destroyed the tank. Wait a minute. If this is an issue with autoloaders, and Ukraine also has T-72 and T-64 and T-80 tanks, don't they have this weakness also? Yes, they do. They absolutely have the same issue. So why aren't we seeing as many Ukrainian tanks destroyed this way? It really just comes down to the quality of the training of the drone crews. There's no secret sauce here. This is a pretty easy way with a drone to destroy a tank. It's just Ukrainian drone operators have a more rigid training program. They're more experienced, and they have more time doing this. They have about a 1-year head start on the Russians. The other thing is, for every video that we see of a destroyed tank, there are 6, 8, 10, 12 misses that we never see. Or they hit the turret, and there's just not enough hot gases get through, and the tank just keeps on going. Or it hits the chassis, the hull, but it doesn't get that mobility kill. tanks still have a role on the 21st century battlefield, and they will continue to have a role. We probably won't be seeing the huge tank battles like we saw in Operation Desert Storm. Those days are probably over. Now, 21st century weapon designers and military planners are going to have to consider drones going forward in the future. For Russia, with the T-14 Armata program being declared too expensive, and we didn't even see T-14 tanks during the Victory Day parades on May 9th, they have a bit of a problem because right now they are refurbishing old T-72, T-80s, and T-90s. They're producing a small number of T-90s every month. That doesn't address this weakness, and there's no easy way to address it. That isn't, by the way, the fault of Soviet designers. This wasn't on their radar at all. And in a conventional battlefield where you're using anti-tank weapons or rocket-propelled grenades or artillery, those tanks are very well armored. Protecting the turret ring to the degree it needs to be protected now just wasn't an engineering consideration. But going forward, it's going to be one. Appreciate you watching to the end. It is the best way to feed the algorithm on whatever platform you might be watching this on. If you like content like this, remember to go ahead and smash that follow or subscribe button. Malcontent out.